Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, crystals and fondle slab of choice, and the internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information, because seriously, they don't want you to have to breeze two sources whenever I try to prove out. It's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man.
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions. Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2. Within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America, we bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original. We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years.
That's that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And yes, that is that. And wow, I tried to do a little pre-show thing because there was some dead air before my show, but didn't quite work out because my browser didn't want to cooperate. As I told you guys, sorry. But we are broadcasting live on UCY.TV radio again, thankfully. So, of course, it's Tuesday night, and you know what? If I have time toward the end of the show, I will finish reading that thing I started reading just before the show. From my friend there in Syria. Okay. But it is Tuesday, so that means that I devote my show to the Liberty Beacon. That is the Liberty Beacon, all one word.com. You can find tons and tons of interesting articles there. And, of course, my first guest and my most favorite guest from the Liberty Beacon, Roger Landry, is with me already. How you doing tonight, Roger?
I'm doing great, and I'm always looking forward to having a chat with you, Chuck.
Oh, I feel almost strange when I hear that from you because I'm telling you, I learn something every single time you and I speak. Even if it's off the air for 10 minutes, I learn something new, sir. Oh, wait. I apologize.
Yeah, you almost...
I told you, sir, again. I'm sorry. I have this natural need to give you that respect when I talk to you, Roger. I'm sorry. You're my friend. You're my brother. You are one of a kind, though. And I had to stop again. I almost did it again. But
you did the two things that I really, really don't like to have done, and this is out of respect for the other individual. Is one, don't call me sir because I'm an ex-Navy chief, so I had two parents, and two, don't tell me you're sorry for doing things out of respect and out of caring. Because that is never anything to be sorry about. So you called me, sir, and then you apologized for doing something nice. So you hit both of them in one sentence, Chuck.
Well, if I'm going to do something, whether it's make a mistake or not, I'm going to do it all the ways. You know what?
Yes, sir. You are good at that. You cover all the bases. Well, of course.
Now,
go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I was just going to say, at least I got to look at the article today, before I brought you on. And boy, am I glad we are going to wind up discussing this. And Roger generally has an article ready. Sometimes he doesn't. He doesn't really need one because we can just have a conversation. And believe me, we will hit upon something where there will be a need for a natural article to sort of flow out of his mouth anyway. But in this case, we have one that's already done. Were you going to add something in before we got to the article, though?
No. Well, basically what I was going to state was I found a really good article, which is attached to the bottom. And it was about something that I had been thinking about writing about for a while. So what it did was it shoved me over the edge of sitting on the fence, and I got off my dead butt, and I actually wrote an article and attached additional information in the form of another article at the base of it. But this is when we get into this, I will explain to you why I felt it's so important we discuss this.
Well, right, and as soon as I saw, some of the attributions at the bottom as well, so you could show people exactly what we're talking about regarding, spoiler alert, regarding Monsanto, regarding some of this other stuff, I said to myself, oh boy, this is definitely something that has been on his mind for a while. And this is something that all of the articles that you write on the Liberty Beacon definitely are loaded with this kind of stuff. But and I'm telling you, just go to thelibertybeacon.com and you'll find tons of this stuff. And you know what? If you don't want to do that, I'll tell you what else you can do. You can go to YouTube, okay, and you can just enter Roger Landry, or if you want to be like me, just enter Liberty Beacon or the Liberty Beacon rant. And you'll find plenty of stuff. I posted something earlier today from last year that I thought was really good. And it was just one of the things that I had on while I was searching and vetting some other information. Actually, I had it on in the background and had to stop what I was doing for a minute to listen to you.
Okay. I would like to give a short preface, though, about the network, because you so graciously do a show every Tuesday about the Liberty Beacon Project, and every once in a while I like to give people an update as to what's actually going on in the Liberty Beacon Project.
Yes, and the Liberty Beacon radio network is getting ready to launch. I know that, and
that's one of them. Yep.
And there's more. So please fill us in.
Well, I think the last time I discussed this, we had 12 websites that were available for public viewing. We are in the process of launching a website in Finland. We are in the process of launching a website called The Middle East Rising, which will cover the issues in the Middle East. And these will the articles on this website will be articles from people with boots on the ground, people who are actually in the Middle East, living this on a daily basis, talking to these people. This won't be like the mainstream media where you're handed a script and this is supposed to be what's going on in the Middle East. This will be a site called The Middle East Rising. It will be populated by articles written by individuals who actually have boots on the ground in the Middle East. And we're also launching another website for Dr. David Lewis, who we've discussed before. I've done several shows with him, and one with him and Dr. Andrew Wakefield. He is an EPA/CDC whistleblower. He is a PhD level microbiologist scientist, and he is now an integral part of the Liberty Beacon Project, so we will be launching a website for him also. And after the first of the year, we'll be starting a brand new endeavor, and that will be an internet television network to follow our internet radio network, which we'll be launching within the next couple of days.
Which I'm dying to see and actually going to participate in. On some level, we're going over different things here, so
yep.
I know that you'll probably it won't be too much arm twisting to be done to get me to run my mouth on there, but I'm going to participate some other ways because everybody knows I do love to talk. But I also love to get out great information. I'll tell you one thing, little quick aside, Roger, and just take this for the jab in the ribs that it is. I would really appreciate it if I could get my hands on Dr. Wakefield, because he is one of the guys that when I started this show was on my wish list for people that I really wanted to have on. And I made a couple of attempts. And I'll tell you, if I could get your help with that, I would really appreciate it. And I don't care where I do that show. I really want to talk to this man. So,
well, I would tell you that there are two individuals you need to talk to. And each one of them in their own right has a paramount issue to discuss. And that is Dr. David Lewis and Dr. Andrew Wakefield. And we'll see what we can do about lining both of them up for you, because anybody who's part of the Liberty Beacon Project shares in all of the assets of the Liberty Beacon Project. So we'll definitely work towards that for you.
Excellent, sir. There we go with the sir again. See, I can't stop myself, Roger.
That's all right. You know what? I've already done my chastising for today, so I'll leave it lie.
All right. So now that we've gotten all those updates out of the way, and definitely I want everybody to try and, tune into these things, check them out. I'm wondering how that television project is going to go, because, after all, I don't intend to be part of that, because I do have a face for radio, but it's okay.
Well, there are a lot of people out there who not only are not afraid to put their face up, but at the same time, we can splice in movie clips or clips of movies appropriate to the topic, so on and so forth. When you add another dimension of visual to a topic, it increases the intensity of the delivery. So it is only the obvious next step from our radio network launch to add that one more dimension in, which will be the visual. And with that, we will, like I said, increase the intensity of the information delivered.
Right. I mean, audio-visual presentations are the the hallmark of somebody who's trying to get the information across to as many people as possible to spread the word better. Because for some people, they are visual learners. Some people are audio type learners, like myself. I take a lot of stock from the intonation, the way information is delivered, and all of that. But not a lot of people do that. A lot of people are really more caught by the imagery of things.
Yes.
And, so this is extremely important and a good idea, sir.
We are a visually oriented society anymore.
Right.
Everything, your iPhone, your computer, your big screen TV, everything has a visual interface anymore. And a lot of this has basically been pushed by the huge advertising companies of the world, because they realize that telling you that an apple tastes good will touch a certain part of your brain. But watching you bite into a nice red juicy apple and a little bit of juice squirting out as your teeth chomp down on that apple makes you salivate. And so what you have is a much more engrossing experience with the same information being put out. And a lot of this, as I said, is due to these huge marketing firms. And every one of our electronic toys, so to speak, has picked up on this. So just about anything you will do, you can buy refrigerators and stoves, and they have a visual interface right on the front, an LCD screen. I mean, it's all about that visual impact, and we have become a very visually oriented society.
Absolutely true. So let us now attempt to paint a word picture, since I'm not on a television platform at the moment, regarding a very serious issue, and one that has far-reaching consequences, and it reverberates in a whole lot of sectors in society one way or another. And I am setting up, obviously, for your...
Okay, and you're doing quite the job. Let me start off by saying there has never been a point in the history of humanity where a population has been attacked in so many directions simultaneously. Now, I'm going to give a short overview on that, and then we're going to delve into this specific topic, okay? We're being rained down, and you've all heard me say this a couple of weeks ago on Chuck's show. We're all being rained down upon by millions of metric tons of aluminum nanoparticles that they spray into the upper atmosphere to reflect sunlight. It's called geoengineering. Okay, or weather modification. This is a fact. It's a fact to the tune that Monsanto and Dow and other biotech companies are patenting seeds that can grow in aluminum-saturated soil. Aluminum-saturated soil does not exist anywhere on this earth at levels where plants cannot grow. And once you reach a certain level, plants can't grow, or they'll die off, or they'll be severely stunted, or they won't go to seed. So when you see these biotech companies producing or spending millions of dollars to genetically engineer seeds to grow in aluminum saturated soil, that aluminum's only coming from one place. It's raining down on the soil from the upper atmosphere. So we're being attacked in the air by the air we breathe, the food we eat, the metals and poisons in the vaccines we receive, the fluoride in our water, the massive amount of big pharmaceuticals, either psychotropic or psychiatric drugs that we receive, which over 30% of the 310 million people in this country are on already, including a lot of our children. So it doesn't matter where you look, our health is being attacked. Each and every one of these mechanisms has been proven in short term to damage both the biosphere. And yes, I'm even talking about big pharmaceuticals, because we all pee and we all defecate, and all defecate, and all defecate, and all defecate. And not all of these pharmaceuticals are absorbed into the system, and there are massive amounts of these pharmaceuticals present in the water we drink, if you drink from a local reservoir or whatever. And this has been proven via scientific studies. So we are literally being poisoned every mechanism that approaches the body. Every mechanism. Never in the history of this planet has a population been more attacked in more directions legally and supported by our government. Our government approves these poisonous pharmaceuticals. Our government approves this geoengineering. Our government approves, they have to, these GMOs. Our government approves, one agency or another, these vaccines we get. Our government approves the fluoride that's put in our water. So this is a multi-pronged attack. Each and every mechanism which has been proven by a multitude of peer-reviewed studies, published peer-reviewed studies, to be harmful to the human body. Each and every one of them short-term. Now let's take that one step further. Let's take the fact that you are breathing these poisons, eating these poisons, getting injected by these poisons, drinking these poisons, and taking these poisons via medication. Now, if any one of them we pick out, is considered to be harmful to the body short term and could be deadly to the body long term, as in we see massive increases in cancer, we see massive increases in dementia, Alzheimer's. All of this is being affected by these mechanisms. Then let me ask you a question. If each and every one of them by themselves is toxic, what is the combination of all of them at once doing to the human physiology and the biosphere? Why? I ask myself why. Why, when I was born in 1954, was I born into one of the healthiest societies on this planet? And today I live in the sickest society on this planet. We are the most GMO'd, the most vaccinated, the most geoengineered, the most fluoridated, and the most drugged country on the planet, bar none. Do your research. Check it out. I never lie. I never exaggerate. So, again, why are we the sickest society on this planet? Try the fallout on the human physiology of all of these poisons being bombarded against your body and your physiology on a daily basis over decades and generations. And I don't have to ask myself why anymore. But let's get into what I believe, unless you'd like to say something before I jump into this article, Chuck.
Well, the only thing that you left off there was autism.
Well, autism is a causality of these poisons.
Oh yeah, that was why I was mentioning it. Of course, autism, all of these different brain dysfunctions that we're seeing
Cognitive disorders.
Cognitive disorders. Thank you. That's a better term. We're seeing that on a mass scale now, and we've seen this incrementally During your generation, you were a bit luckier there, but during my generation, we've seen this incremental increase of all of these poisons, all of this stuff becoming not just, a limited sort of thing, but becoming absolutely ubiquitous. And yes, I do like that word. Ubiquitous is exactly what it has become. There is literally, and we've discussed this, you and I privately, we've discussed that there is absolutely no escape. It is without precedent in human history at this point.
And all approved and all supported by the people we elect or appoint to protect us.
Correct.
There's your complicity and your corruption. We know that just recently the CDC got slammed under the bus for hiding a research that was done 13 years ago showing the link between the MMR vaccine and autism, especially as it relates to young African American male children, but in essence linked to the entire population. So we know they're lying to us. We know they're falsifying data. We know they're hiding data. They're only doing this for the puppets, the people who pull their strings, the people who own them. And that is the large biotech conglomerates and the large pharmaceutical conglomerates. This is why it's being done. This is who benefits from it. But I will take it one step further, and I will tell you that the elitists firmly believe there are too many humans on this planet. So if they sterilize us, make us sick, shorten our lives, eventually over the next couple of generations, the population of this planet is going to fall. And once it goes into the negative numbers, it will be hellfire to ever stop it and start it back in the positive direction. This is intentional. There is no other way you can justify all of these poisons bombarding us in every single direction. As you so aptly put it, Chuck, there's no escape. You have to eat 80% plus. 85%, some people say now, everything you eat is genetically engineered. Mm-hmm. There is no escape. You have to drink water, you have to breathe, you have to take medication when you're sick, you have to eat. All of these things are mechanisms of poisoning the human physiology. But let's get into this article because we're already 22 or 23 minutes into this, and I'd like to at least get through this because I believe this presents a clear and present danger of a magnitude that speaks above just about everything we've discussed in immediacy. Mm-hmm. All right, so let me get started in on this. I don't know if you have a chat room you can throw that link into, Chuck, but the name of the article for anybody listening and doesn't have a chat available to them, the name of the article is Enlist Duo, spelled ENLISTDUO, Frankentoxin.
And I will get that into the chat room. It's just going to take me a couple of minutes, but I will get it there while you're reading, okay?
Okay. It's Enlist Duo, Frankentoxin, and human lab rats. Now, again, I never exaggerate. I never lie. But I will put things blatantly. So that's a pretty blatant title. Let's speak to it, okay? Most who would be listening to a show like this speaking to this topic are already painfully aware of the super pesticides and herbicides we suffer today as allowable residuals on the food we eat. When you spray a crop, there is no way in hell that you can get everything that you sprayed multiple times onto these crops off before you eat them. I don't care if you scrub them, wash them, whatever you do. A lot of these plants are porous. They do absorb some of these chemicals, and you will never, ever get all of these poisons off the food they are sprayed on. So the EPA and the FDA have what's called a residual allowable, which means that say 20 parts per million of this particular chemical will be allowed on the food that's put on your dinner table. So let's go on, okay? Scientists from across the planet have been railing against one in particular for years, and that's glyphosate. That was originally the main active ingredient in Monsanto's Roundup, but the patent has since expired, so a lot of these chemical companies are producing glyphosate. This genetically engineered biotoxin has been tied via solid scientific research and peer-reviewed studies to increase sterility, kidney failure, cancers, and much more. But I won't go through the entire list because we've only got about 30 minutes to finish this. Just last year, the U.S. government allowed a massive increase in this chemical residual on the food, the very food you put on your table and feed to your children and to your loved ones. Now stop and think about that. We knew prior to last year, and 850 scientists have signed petitions, and
Okay, looks like might have lost you for a second there. All right, not too sure what happened, but it seems as though I might have lost the connection with Roger. This is a good article, though. I just dropped it in chat a few minutes ago, less than a minute ago, actually, as I'm speaking. You back, Roger?
Yeah, somebody doesn't want us to talk about this, but that's all right. We're going to do it anyway, no matter how many times they drop us off.
Exactly. Continue. Sorry.
All right. And you know, why did you apologize for that? Did you do that intentionally?
No, of course not.
Okay, just don't apologize. It's not your fault, my friend.
All right.
Anyway, so what we have here, we knew for years leading up to this action last year, the main and renowned scientist, that the level of residuals in the food we put on our table was already poisoning us. It was sterilizing us. It was triggering cancers within the body. It was triggering kidney failure, liver damage, so on and so forth. Unbeknownst to the public, and in the dark of the night, the CDC, the EPA, and the FDA got together, bumped their heads together, and decided, hey, what? The biotech industry wants us to put a massive increase in the amount of glyphosate residual allowed on the food, and they did it. In some cases, up to doubling from 20 parts per million on certain foods all the way up to 40 parts per million. When you double a toxic substance, it doesn't double the toxicity or the toxic impact on the body. In some cases, by doubling the amount of a poison, it can have magnitudes of increased effect on the body. And nobody knows because no research has been done on this.
Well, so, right, Roger, 1 second, because I'm going to say something here real quick, and you're breaking up a little bit here and there. But the thing is this, it's not a simple mathematical question where you have, if you double the amount of toxin, you simply have double the effect. It's not that simple. Because, look, it breaks down like this. If, say, 10 micrograms of something is a problem, okay, and you increase it to 20, the 10 micrograms that may have caused, your kidneys to fail doesn't necessarily mean, if it only caused one kidney to fail, well, when you go to 20, it's going to just cause the other one to fail. It doesn't work that way. What happens is the toxicity becomes different. It doesn't necessarily follow like that, first of all. The second thing is that the containers that this stuff is in are also a problem. Okay, don't forget that, because that's part of the equation as well. When you have chemicals that leach into it, in addition to the pesticides, when you have the plastics that leach and you have all these other things leaching into the food, there is an extra effect. So this is not a singular effect just because of the glyphosate, but this is also because of the containers and packaging and things as well. And, this is something that should not be lost on anyone as well. And factually, simply again, because it's not scientifically so simple that when you double an amount of a toxin or you double an amount of a poison, that it simply follows that you have double the effect only. In fact, sometimes when you double a toxin, you're actually tripling, quadrupling, or multiplying by 10 or by a factor of 10, even in some cases, that particular type of damage. Now, Roger, I think we have you back again, so please continue. I didn't want to interrupt, but I also didn't want to have you breaking up there either.
Okay, and I don't understand because I'm showing a strong signal here. Somebody must be not wanting you to talk.
That could be. That could be.
All right. So, if we already knew that this was what is considered to be a toxic level to human physiology prior to this move by the government, then why, without any public fanfare or knowledge, did they permit an increase of any significance or at all? One has to wonder about this. Now, right below that section, I put 3 links to several articles I would like you to read that will give you a massive amount of information on glyphosate and its issues with the human physiology and the biosphere. When I say that it is one of the most toxic and evil substances on the planet, it is. But you need to prove something like that. So this is why the active links are there. Another player in the ever-increasing significance of these biotoxins is 2,4-D. Now, 2,4-D was the main active ingredient in Agent Orange.
Mm-hmm.
Agent Orange is the gift that keeps on giving in places like Cambodia and Vietnam, where the spraying several generations ago was used to defoliate or kill the greenery in forested areas to allow the U.S. military to track enemy or troop supply movements during the Vietnam War, because a lot of that, it was covered canopy, basically jungle. So they went in and sprayed the Agent Orange. It killed everything that was living, and it allowed the overflights to see troop or supply movements through this jungled area. So you can already understand this stuff ain't good. But still, the indigenous populations to this day are still suffering from massive cancers, massive birth defects, stillbirths, infertility, and more as a result of this spraying. Dozens of studies have been published on the links of 2,4-D and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, as well as soft tissue sarcoma in humans. Cancer! And this is just the very tip of the iceberg. We know it's connected to infertility. We know it's connected to stillbirths. We know it's connected to spontaneous abortion. We know it's connected to, and basically, doesn't this sound like the list I just gave you from glyphosate? All right. And again, I've given you 2 links to the toxic substance 2,4-D that you can look at right under that section of the article. But now we come to the hyperinsanity, and I call it hyperinsanity for a reason. A relatively new product branded Enlist Duo is about to increase in proliferation in a huge fashion. They estimate that if approved by the government, its usage, which it is now being used in places like turf or lawn care or stuff like that, they are petitioning the government to spray it on the food we eat. Okay? They estimate that if this is approved, over the next decade, its usage will increase from 3-fold up to 7-fold over what it's being used right now. This evil substance contains a combination of glyphosate and 2,4-D. 2 of the most damaging chemicals to the human physiology and the biosphere known to science. Yet this government seems oblivious to scientific fact, historical data, and an ever-increasing rage of the population. Now, stop and think about what I just said. I spent the first 5 minutes railing about glyphosate and gave you some great links and told you that it was causing cancer. It was causing sterility. It was causing liver and kidney damage. It was causing blah, blah, right on down the line. Then I stepped over to the next one, which is 2,4-D, the active ingredient in Agent Orange, one of the most evil substances ever used against humanity in the history of this planet. And I read to you another list of known causes by or known issues being perpetrated by this chemical, and the two seem oddly alike. And now I'm telling you they're combining the two of them. I'm going to take a pause in this article to explain to you why. Why would they bother to combine these two evil substances into one? Because GMOs, which everybody will tell you is one of the most evil things that's ever happened to this planet, GMOs they're basically genetically engineered to allow these toxins to rain down on them, and they can shrug it off like it never happened. But what happens when you do that? These are herbicides. They are meant to kill living plants. Everything but the genetically engineered or modified crop you're spraying it on. So we start with glyphosate. Glyphosate was sold or genetically engineered GMO crops and seeds was sold to the farmers with this, okay? If you plant these genetically modified crops, they will grow. We have a special herbicide you can put on them. It'll never hurt it. It'll kill the weeds. You can get by with half the pesticides you are using now, which will save you money.
Mm-hmm.
What they didn't say was that over the first 3 generations of growing, the weeds not only became immune to the glyphosate, but they actually started to drink it up like it was something good. We have now what's called super weeds as a result of their mutation due to the excessive spraying of glyphosate on these crops. So now you've got super weeds that, just like the crop that's genetically engineered, when you spray them with glyphosate, they go, oh yeah, let me grab a bar of soap. This is a shower. This is great. Give me some more. So now it takes up to 300 or 400% more of this toxic substance, glyphosate, this herbicide, to keep the weeds under control. So now these farmers are not using less and saving money. They're using 3 to 4 times that herbicide, which is deadly to humanity. Now, why do you think they raised the level of glyphosate residual allowed in your food last year without telling anybody? And I told you I'd get to this. When you spray that food crop with 300 or 400% more of this poison just to control the weeds, it absorbs more. So you have 2 options now. You can either throw that entire crop away because you'll never be able to sell it because the residual left on that food when it goes to market exceeds what the government mandated as the limit, or you can pay the government off and have the limit raised. Which do you think happened?
Well, it appears as though it's, the problem and the reaction right on time to the problem is, well, we'll just raise the levels. Haven't we heard this story before? And, after all, it's just weed killers, so, it's not bad for you or anything. Of course, the plants that keep absorbing this stuff, and remember, if they absorb it, it becomes part of them, doesn't it? So it's not just the residual residue on top of these things. Now it's literally part of it.
Well, it goes even deeper than that. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So now what they've decided to do, since they realize that this is a never-ending cycle, the more they spray, the more resistant the weeds are going to become. So it will be that these farmers will end up just absolutely having no profit whatsoever because all the profit's going to go into herbicides to keep the weeds down so that they have any crop at all at the end of the year, or the end of the growing season. So they said, okay, let's mix the 2 of them together. Let's mix 2 of the most evil substances mankind has known and ever put on their food together. Okay? Although each of these GE or genetically engineered toxins on their own is serious reason for concern, the result of combining them is totally uncharted. We're in uncharted territory. This has never been done. Okay? Science has proven many times that combining two chemicals does not necessarily double the toxic reaction, but may actually result in an increase of toxicity of magnitudes. Where are the studies to prove this is not the case here? Where is the proof that these giant chemical and biotech companies are not unleashing a blight on humanity magnitudes above the already toxic fallout of these chemicals as individual agents of destruction? Where is the government whose purpose and whose mandate is to protect us? Now look at the title again at this point, okay? Let's read it. Enlist duo, Frankentoxin, and human lab rats, because these two substances have never been combined and put on the food you eat. In order to tell if there is any damage to the human physiology at an increased level over either one of these separately, it would take years of study. Years, maybe even decades. They do not wish to wait 10 or 20 years to control these weeds and get their crops to the market, their genetically engineered or modified crops. So who becomes the lab rat now? You and I become the lab rat, okay? Let's take this further. Once again, humanity will be substituted for the lab rat. And a generation from now, we will know the results via our damage for life, our dead, or our never born. And if the ramifications of each of these toxins individually is any indication, we're in serious freaking trouble. We are.
And you know what? The worst thing to me here is this. And I don't know if everybody picked this up. I know you laid it down, but you kind of went over it real quick, and I like to simplify things. Here's the thing. We know that each of these substances alone cause damage. Severe damage. Okay? Now, putting them together doesn't necessarily mean that if one causes kidney failure and one causes brain tumors, well, whatever it is, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get both of those things. It could create a whole new strain of reactions, a whole new category. Perhaps because we have super weeds, super pesticides, perhaps we'll have super cancers. We don't know. And how are they going to find out? Well, we'll just see what happens to the population when we do it.
We have become the lab rat.
Yeah.
And there is no gentle way to put that. When you mix two known biotoxins, and I call them Frankentoxins, together, you have no clue without long-term genetic study of the outcome. This has never happened. So you and I and our children will be the lab rats for this Frankentoxin. Okay? There is no doubt in the mind of anybody in the Liberty Beacon Project or most of our supporters that we will live to regret this poison in a fashion beyond our understanding today, unless we rally the troops and provide some serious pushback for the sake of our children, our loved ones, and humanity, and basically this planet as a whole. Now, below that, I have attached another article that will give you even more information. And the name of that article is U.S. Experts Push Congress to Reject Toxic Herbicide Mix Elitist Duo. Now, what I've basically told you, let me synopsize this real quick, okay, is that we have two biotoxins that are known through peer-reviewed studies published in scientific journals to cause cancer, to cause sterility, to cause birth defects, to cause stillbirths, to cause, I could go on, kidney failure. They are starting to ban glyphosate in several countries across the planet because of the massive kidney damage that has been tied directly to this herbicide. But yet you don't hear about that in America. Just like there are vaccines that are being banned in several countries because of their massive side effects and deaths they're causing. Up to 2,000 people in this country have died from the same vaccination, but you don't hear anything about it, and there's no breaks going on that vaccine in this country. So now what we have is two of the worst biotoxins ever produced in the history of humanity being combined, a combination of which no long-term study has ever been done on, a combination which could prove benign, I doubt that very seriously, all the way up to extremely and hyper disastrous to all of humanity. But who is the most biotoxined society on this planet? Gee, we're talking about Americans again. Stop and think about what's happening. The infertility rate is rising faster in the United States than any country on the planet. We are the most biotoxined, the most GMO'd, the most vaccinated, the most chemtrailed, the most drugged, and the most fluoridated. Right now, the one we're talking about is the biotoxins. Right now, what we're talking about is an evil that never, ever should be permitted. Right now, we're talking about a biotoxin that our government is very, very, very aware is extremely dangerous and toxic to the human physiology, but yet their puppet masters are saying, we're going to make big bucks off of this. Stick your hand out behind you. Here you go. Here's an extra $20, $50, $100,000. Put your stamp of approval on this. And it will happen. It will happen. We are being sold down the river again, my friends. We knew a year ago that glyphosate alone was causing massive damage to the human physiology and the biosphere. And in the dark of night, because of the superweeds their own chemicals had created, the government allowed a massive increase in the amount that goes on your dinner table. So every time, and these toxins don't just go on GMO foods. These herbicides go on other plants as well, okay? Every time you're putting something, an ear of corn or something made out of wheat or cornflakes or something on your table now in front of your children to eat, will you be thinking, am I poisoning my child today? Because damn it, you better be thinking that, because that's exactly what you're doing. And if you think this is an accident, get your head out of your butt. This is all being done intentionally. Do you think every scientist and PhD level researcher working for the EPA, the FDA, the CDC are all idiots and they don't know what this yokel living in northern Montana on the prairie knows? They know everything I know and more. So now you give me an excuse for what they're doing to you, your family, humanity, and this planet. Give me an excuse. I dare you. I'm done, Chuck.
Well, you know, and to hear you at that level, I'm with you. You know, as I sit, and
pisses me off.
Of course it does, because it's absolutely
evil.
It's unfathomable evil. It is absolutely one of these things that just it's like, this is not coincidence. This is not an accident. This is not just greed. This is by design.
Yes.
So I look at and I you know, recently, you know, with the birth of my son, I look at stuff like the baby cereal, okay? And all of this stuff is going to come from these crops. Yep. All of this stuff. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. I got to jump in here real quick, because you want to know a real evil here? You just mentioned kids and food, okay? Yes. There are 3 or 4 million poor mothers on the WIC program in this country. That's where they get free formula and food for their children because they can't afford it. And these are infant children, okay? Infant children. It's called the WIC program. Look it up.
Newborns to the age of 5.
Newborns. Now, did you know that when that mother goes to the store to buy formula, she is not permitted to get natural formula. She is only permitted to buy GMO formula with that WIC program.
That's right. The cheapest, actually most loaded with GMO stuff
That
possible.
is all she is, and it is all poisoning the lower class, because there are people out there who believe that they are a weight, a load on society. Tell me where I'm wrong.
I can't.
No, I wasn't talking to you, Chuck. I know what you're going to say.
Oh yeah, this is absolutely correct. And if you don't believe it, check out what it is they are allowed to buy on the WIC program. You'll find that it is exactly the cheapest, most loaded. Of course, it's not the natural stuff that you can get, which is more expensive, which requires and it's again one of these things where it's okay because it's just
it's made from soy, and 90 to 95% of all the soy grown in this country is genetically engineered.
Well, you got it.
And the formula is made from soy.
Right.
And they are not allowed to get the milk formula or the powdered milk formula. They are only allowed to buy the soy formula.
You got it. And it's always the cheap stuff, which is and I'll tell you, I think somebody should look into the fact that it's actually restricted to only a couple of companies' stuff, by the way. Because that's another weird thing going on there. Because I've looked at this myself. I watched it happen over the years. My first kids were part of that program because I had no idea that this was a problem. And I thought, well, it was a good helping hand for somebody who was a working guy like me, and did not see a problem with it until I started to learn what's in this stuff. Okay. And that's not even, putting the pesticides aside, but the pesticides in addition to the fact that it's a GMO product to begin with.
Mother's breast milk has been tested across Canada, and there's going to be a huge announcement on that within a month or so, a huge publication and a movie. And guess what? They don't even have as many GMOs as we do, and a huge portion of the mother's breast milk that was tested with toxic levels of, guess what? Glyphosate in the mother's milk.
Well, because what she eats is what she feeds the baby. Any mother.
That's right.
So guess what? Again, where's your escape? You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to manufacture, and I'm doing this now. I'm manufacturing, food for my son. This is not an easy process. Okay, this is not something that that is done easily, and this. It doesn't matter though. I'm thinking at some points, because where am I going to get anything that is not tainted at this point in time?
And look up in the sky. Oh my God, look at those big streaks across the sky. Okay, tomorrow test your soil for increased aluminum content. Yeah.
While I was talking to you, actually, while you were talking and reading your article, a nice plane went overhead.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
The point here is, and in synopsis, okay, we are again being sold out by this government. Again. They know very, very well. If I know, and Chuck knows, and a lot of you in this audience listening know, that both of these are toxins beyond what any human being should be consuming. To allow first a massive increase in one, and then allow the combination of both, which has never had long-term testing. You and I, my friends, have become the lab rats again. And 20 years or 10, anywhere between 10 and 20 years from now, when cancer increases by magnitudes again, we can look back at this and say, yep, weren't we good guinea pigs? Aren't we the best lab rats they've ever had?
And we're already looking at that now from the stuff that we know about they did in the past.
Yep.
And this is, hey, let's take two evil things and put it together so that we can just see what happens.
Well, if they can kill weeds with it. But stop and think about that. We already know that with just the Agent Orange active ingredient, okay, just that, the 2,4-D, eventually the weeds became immune to that. We know with the glyphosate, eventually the weeds became immune to that. Mix the two of them together, you might get a couple of generations of crop out of this, but eventually the weeds are going to become accustomed to that. What are we going to get next?
In the meantime, you don't have to look too far to know what happened to soldiers that were exposed to this stuff in country, in Vietnam at the time. You don't have to look too far to see what happened to their offspring. There were lawsuits and all kinds of things that were signed off on. There was the Agent Orange case, which is one of the few things that the U.S. government ever did actually settle. At this point, I've been questioned about this when I brought up the fact that Agent Orange still exists essentially because it's in your weed killing products. People that have called me crazy, I told them to go look it up, first of all. And secondly, they say to me, well, nobody's complaining about it anymore. And I said, well, let's be honest. Most of the people that were seriously exposed to this stuff in the beta phase are dead.
And what about, let's take that one step further. Let's draw another analogy, another parallel. What about the Gulf War syndrome and the vaccines that were experimented on our soldiers who went over and fought in the Gulf War? How many of them are dead, or how many of them are seriously incapacitated through the quote-unquote Gulf War syndrome? This is a direct result of vaccine experimentation on our military. And massive numbers of them are either dead or incapacitated for life.
Yeah,
and the government refuses to acknowledge it.
In addition, because they never just cover one base, Roger. In addition, the testing was also done on the use of depleted uranium in that feeder.
Absolutely.
So you combine two things that are plenty toxic and see what happens, right? Wow, we're all surprised, aren't we? Spent shells and this spread of depleted uranium. I'm sure that did a lot of good for the population in Iraq, didn't it? They were good and healthy off of that.
It's still doing it. It'll be doing it for a long time. They haven't cleaned that stuff up. But the thing of it is, if you've got a soldier who agrees to give his life for his country, fighting an enemy he can see, only to be killed by his own country, fight with his body fighting against a poison that he was never aware of. Let me explain something to you. Where do you think the anger from these vets is coming from? They never signed up to be poisoned to death. They signed up to give their life, if needed, to protect the security of this country. They were deceived on a level that most of us cannot even conceive.
Right, and this to me is absolutely part of the most treasonous elements in our own government allowing this stuff going on. And I call it treason because guess what? That is exactly what it is. Okay, as far as I'm concerned.
It's also greed and control. These people want to be around when the peons like you and me have been eliminated. What they don't seem to understand is that there's very few open chairs at the elitist dinner table. A lot of these people who are doing the things they're doing for greed and corruption and complicity have no place at the elitist dinner table. So when we go, they're going to find they're going to be right in that line marching with us.
You got it. They think that somehow this is buying them points with the controllers. It isn't. They're just the useful idiots.
They are the puppets. You don't give a puppet any special consideration. You pull on its arm and a string and the arm pops up. You pull on another string and the mouth falls open. So it's not a matter of these elites feeling they owe these puppets anything. They don't. You don't make special considerations for a frickin' wooden puppet. You just use him. And when he's no longer useful, you throw him out and get a new puppet.
You got it. And I wish sometimes that we could, get a hold of some of these guys that are spraying these things over our heads that are participating in this stuff that are not going to earn themselves a spot at that dinner table, as you said. I don't know what they're going to be eating because, then again, because of their technologies and things, they think they'll be immune to this stuff, I guess.
The first big clue ought to be the fact that you see anybody out in a field spraying 2,4-D or glyphosate on crops, and you will find them in a Mars suit. Every square inch of their body is covered by a hermetically sealed suit. They are breathing through a respirator. They are wearing masks. They will not expose one tiny spot of their skin or their respiratory system to these toxic chemicals. But yet, they have no problem feeding it to you and me and our children.
Another fun thing is if you talk to some of these guys, they're still getting sick even with those suits on.
Oh, of course they are.
Yeah, because it guess what? It's, resistant to that type of prophylactic action. It doesn't necessarily follow that because you're using a respirator and you're using a hazmat suit that you're going to get away with things. These poisons are, by design, they're very, very effective. Okay, so
who's your next guest today?
James Wright.
Aha. I'd like to stick around just long enough to say hello to James, and then I'll bow out because I really don't want to intrude into this man's time.
Oh, absolutely, Roger. I was just about to grab him, but I wanted to make that point that even the people that are out there spraying this stuff, even those who are using, one or two, elements of the now what is a super toxin at this point,
a frankentoxin.
The frankentoxin. Thank you.
I'm going to brand that. I'm going to get that name out. Everybody's going to be saying it. It's a frankentoxin.
Absolutely. And it's precisely what it is too. I mean, it's not an exaggeration of any kind. It's not an overstatement. It's not hyperbolic by any means. It's absolutely correct. And
we don't lie. We don't exaggerate. We just say things with angst.
There you go. And I, and I discussed with you, some of the stuff that I'm trying to vet and before I bring information to people. And I know that you do the very same types of processes. And this is exactly what we're talking about. Now, speaking of somebody who definitely caused a little bit of a stir on my show, at least from the feedback section, James Wright. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes. How are you?
All right. I'm doing okay. We've been talking with Roger, and Roger wanted to stick around to say hello to you.
Hey, Roger. How's it going?
James, it's going great. Did you catch any of the rant I just put out?
I just had stepped out, so I came back in and rushed in here to get back to do the show. But what were you? What debacle did I cause this time?
Oh, no, it had nothing to do with you. It was about the combination of the Agent Orange active ingredient 2,4-D and glyphosate into a brand new frankentoxin called Enlist Duo.
I did hear part of that, yeah, and it's such, I mean, don't get me started on the faux pas of the U.S. military. I think it's really sad, so.
Well, I wanted to say hello, and because it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. And I'm going to bow out. Chuck, it's always great to be here every single Tuesday, and I look forward to next week. And I wish both of you gentlemen a very pleasant afternoon.
Well, thank you. And Roger, it is always a pleasure and a privilege to have you on. I really appreciate your time and your efforts. And please, everybody, go to the Liberty Beacon, all one word, .com. I dropped that link in chat a little while ago.
And what about your favorite?
For the article, and yes, of course. Also, if you want to go to the edge of the Liberty Beacon Project, you'll find things with a little more attitude, a little more moody, and of course, if everybody who listens to me steadily knows, I'm kind of about attitude and being a little moody. So you go to thefallingdarkness.com, all one word as well. Absolutely endorsed part of the Liberty Beacon Project as well. There are many, many websites actually you can explore, but those are your two best starting points as of right now. So I would say, but I always suggest the Falling Darkness. That's definitely usually my favorite. So, but Roger all by himself, I'll tell you, he's like a one-man gang writing these articles and putting out this information. So definitely look for Roger Landry and check out all of his stuff. Like I said, on YouTube, on various radio networks, every Tuesday here, all over the place. You can't go wrong. And that's all I got to say about that.
Well, that's a mouthful. All right, James. All right, Chuck. You guys have a great day. I'm gone.
All right.
Thanks, you too.
No, James, when I said that you caused a little bit of a stir, it was like a weird sort of reaction I got from people that why do you have a guy on who was part of all that stuff and this and that? And I said, well, listen to what he's saying. Take a listen to the confirmation about the bloodlines. Take a listen to the confirmation about the attitude among, these elites that we talk about all the time. Take a look at the organization, because this is something he's exposing. And let's just reintroduce people in case they didn't catch you last time. Okay, so we can get a good idea. I know you don't really want to point people at the book so much anymore, but I do want to point people at you, sir. So do me a favor and just give me a sort of another cursory introduction, just in case people didn't catch you the first time.
All righty. Well, let's see. My name is James Wright, and I'm originally from Dallas, and I'm from a very drippingly aristocratic family, media mogul family, and so you got all the bloodline stuff going on there. We're St. Clairs and Spencers and all that kind of stuff, and I went to work at a young age for the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry because I was a Mason from a very young age because it was a family tradition. And the environment that I grew up in was very strange and macabre, I would call it. And so when you come out of that, you don't really have a good grip on reality and the world around you. And so I went into it pretty much full throttle, thinking, it was normal and that was what was expected, and it was. And it went on for years, and the longer it went on, the worse it got, and the more abusive and intolerable it got, and it came to a head. And I believe that, once upon a time I was programmed, but I sustained so much of their garbage that it actually had an adverse effect and broke the programming. And so I left, and after a series of events, them harassing me and all that kind of stuff, I made the decision to whistleblow and try to put a stop to this in some way. And I think I'm making an impact. So lately I've been, sustaining a lot of trolling type attacks, saying that I'm some kind of MK Ultra sex slave Masonic Illuminati puppet that's out trying to make Freemasonry sexy in Hollywood and all this kind of crap. And I just find that so beyond hysterical and ludicrous that it's ridiculous. I've pretty much given up I had a very nice life. I gave all that stuff up. I live like pretty much poverty stricken, and even the stuff with my book, I found out when it was too late that that was even being controlled, and that's why I had a falling out with my little Masonic publisher, New Falcon. So, I think I've pretty much proven what my intentions are, and that's why I'm now getting involved with this reality show project that I'm doing, because I want cameras to follow me around and show what a day in my shoes looks like and feels like, and the kind of crazy stuff that goes on, and how I am truly not at any shred of an advantage with this stuff.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because even those of us who attempt to speak out and go into a different direction than our families, because let's not forget, your family is fully entrenched in this stuff.
I was fully ostracized and cut off from doing what I do. Yeah, so I cut myself off from the little cookie jar, honey pot, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But also, this required you to kind of go against your own blood in a way. And I can identify with that because, just in a very simple term, obviously I'm not, I was never a Mason, never have been. I've never been part of any secret society, ladies and gentlemen. So there is no way that anybody could say that I'm in the shoes that he's in. But we could say this, that being from Italian and Irish immigrants, being that being my roots, there's a very serious problem, let's just say, with speaking out against things that America does, or even making the slightest comment against the actions of this country, because after all, this was the land of opportunity for them, and so many generations ago, it may have looked like that, and it was in a lot of ways. But once you step outside of that and you start to speak out against the actions or the or the interests of the nation, let's just say, it kind of puts you on the outside. And this is, a small thing for me because honestly, I was always kind of a black sheep anyway. I never did quite fit in with even my own blood, which is hysterical. But the thing is that I bet that at your core, actually, you sort of had a rebellious nature as well, because otherwise I don't think you would have ever extracted yourself from that, culture, let's just say. Because this is not only, this isn't like peer pressure. This is like, this is the family norm. And we all talk about, well, our families are unaware of things and they didn't quite understand that what happened with this or what happened with that was actually, something that where the wool was pulled over their eyes, et cetera, et cetera. But meanwhile, a guy like this is coming out of a situation where, these are the people that actually do a lot of the networking and get a lot of this stuff done on the ground. And he kind of turned against that, which is pretty dangerous thing for you to do. It's not as simple as being just ostracized or, sort of being an outcast. I mean, literally, they've given you a lot of trouble, haven't they?
Well, yeah, but it really doesn't make any difference to me how they feel because, quite frankly, the situations that I grew up in and everything, I mean, there was such a sickness inherent in my family. It was complete. And this is how these families program. It's everything. What's good is bad and what's bad is good. So if you go out and do things that are defined as good, you're shunned for it. But when you go out and misbehave and do drugs and break the law and act like a crazy little, whatever, Kardashian or something or other, it's celebrated. And I just never understood that. And the older I got, the more I didn't understand it. And, I was an only child, but I have a tremendous amount of first cousins back in Dallas. And, I feel really sorry for them because they're living their life based around that sickness, and so consequently they're all slaves to the purse strings of the monster that is my family back there. And so I've got nothing for them. I don't communicate with them at all. I used to try to communicate still with a couple of my cousins back home, but every time I would try to, all that would come up was just the same old drama and sickness and all of that, and I'd have to hear how I make such horrible decisions, and so I just got tired of it and decided that's it. I don't care to have this in my life, and my life has never been better. And that goes the same way for the Masons. So,
well, do you think it's the money that they use to control guys like you, or is it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because, when you live in a 5,000 square foot mansion when money is no object and the pool's heated every day of the year and any kind of exotic food you could ever dream of is put out daily, by a chef, and you drive around in expensive foreign cars, if you even choose to drive yourself, then, yeah, it can be an extremely daunting psychological thing to hold over someone to, I would equate it to, like, imagine... there's an old episode of The Cosby Show where Bill Cosby's trying to demonstrate why a grown child would not want to leave that nest. And he tells one of his kids, here, go to walk out the front door, and he holds him by the shirt as they're trying to walk out. And he goes, that's the effect. And it's so true.
Well, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like this force field. It's hard to explain because when you're in that environment, you're so accustomed to the niceties, the country clubs, and all of that stuff. That I mean, it's totally an instrument of programming, and you're subservient to it. So you either have to, I mean, like with any family, with any kind of a sickness, you have to break the cycle, and that's exactly what you have to do in a case like this. And I mean, I know so many people that come from these type of aristocratic, deranged environments, and I mean, I always try to help them in some way with advice or resources of some kind or something, but in so many cases, they, at the end of the day, choose to not leave it, and it's sad.
Well, and that's something, which I think is lost on a lot of people when it comes to this, because the idea that it's a very, like, a symbiotic and at the same time almost vampiric situation, because you're taught to feed on things that you have access to, essentially. Right? I mean, you have access to the money, you have access to the resources. So therefore, all of this seems very okay, because after all, the parameters of the world have kind of been laid out for you in this manner. The specifics of what is really so twisted about this is something that I didn't really harp on when I had you on last time, because I don't know, I just didn't feel it necessary. I kind of just glossed over it and said, well, to say that whole, situation and system is sick, I mean, how would you illustrate that?
Well, it's not, I would say that, okay, I never, and people I know from these environments also have never in their lives really held any kind of a significant amount of cash in their hands, or goods that you can buy and sell, stocks, anything like that. And everything is handled by accountants. It's all off in some ivory tower somewhere, like Goldman Sachs was my family's big capital management firm in New York. And consequently, when you go around throughout your day, every day, you live your life on accounts that you never see. It's so you're in this sort of mafioso protective little shell of your name, and you go around town and, oh, you want gas, we'll run that on the Texaco card. Okay, well, you want to go shopping at Barney's, okay, run that on the account. Okay, you want to go eat at this restaurant, put it on the tab. And it's that kind of stuff. And when you're cut off from that, or that is threatened, then it's an extremely crippling thing that most of these kids from these families will completely buckle under. And I would attribute the same kind of thing to families like the Bushes, families like the Windsors, the Rockefellers, you name it. I mean, they all employ these same tactics. So that's the control mechanism on the home front.
Yeah, this is what I meant by, you have access to things, but you don't actually possess anything. It's kind of weird because, simply by, the right of who you are, this gives you access to stuff, which kind of explains the behavior of like the former Texas governor, who was president after his daddy was. If you think about it, it kind of makes a lot of sense. He had access to this and he had access to that. But this is the way all these families kind of function. But when it gets to the specifics of how, like, really ugly it is, I don't think people appreciate that. Because, okay, it's one thing. Well, look, you're complaining about having the ability to, to go places and be able to do what you want. I mean, that doesn't sound like much of a complaint. What was really wrong with being, fully immersed in that world exactly?
What was most wrong goes back to day one of my life, which was my mother was very vocal and open with the fact that she never wanted a child. And it was something that my grandfather imposed on her because, again, it goes back to these bloodlines and good breeding and everything else. So she was paired up with a guy that she didn't even like, and they were married in a loveless marriage, and they both belonged to secret societies, and I was, conceived in the midst of that type of an environment. And so when I was born, I was handed off to nannies to raise, and my mother was always a bit of a bitch, and she never, there was never any love between us ever in my life. So the most love I ever had was my grandmother was a really good person. She married into that, and I don't think by the end of her life had much respect for any of it. And then, of course, the nannies that we had and everything, we as kids, we would bond with them, but as far as our parents, the fathers were never around, and the mothers were always off jet setting and partying. So it's just really sick, and no child should suffer that. And I mean, I've wished a million times that they would have just adopted me out or sent me off to military school or something like that. I think my life would have been a lot better.
Well, there's that, but but there are people that could claim that they have sort of the same situation without the benefit of of that sort of access and ability.
Oh, the filthy millions, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And say, well, look, I came up in a place where there wasn't, I didn't have a loving mom. I didn't have, I'm one of these people, in fact, who could tell you that, you don't have to be elite to have that kind of relationship with your parents where it's non-existent or adversarial. But what's
interesting to me is whether there's a ton of money or not, these problems that I'm describing and you're describing, they do tend to kind of trail these bloodlines, whether it's a small or a large percentage. It's something, because to me, I think my best guess of why is it goes back to the early Middle Ages when these families were breeding their children to fight as Templars in the Crusades. And you know what happens when you breed dogs to fight? Every dog that litter will ever have and puppies that will descend from it will be mean. So that's kind of the same principle here, in my opinion. I'm not a scientist or a geneticist or anything, but that's just the way I see it.
Well, no, and regardless of the epigenetic reaction that one can have, and of course you're not necessarily programmed by your genetics, regardless of those who belong to the American Eugenics Societies, et cetera, et cetera. If you check things like that, you'll find that there are typical characteristics that do carry over, but they're often, it has more to do with how they're raised in some cases than their genetic line, let's just say. But this is an old world way of thinking, and this is continued on throughout these bloodlines. I mean, we can take the examples of we're only going to interbreed with one another. This is a well-known thing as well that occurred with the elites. I believe at the beginning of the 20th century, or maybe it was at the end of the 19th, where they sort of entered into this agreement once again, because it's not the first time it happened. But when you begin to trace some of these bloodlines, you find that some of the people that behaved like this definitely didn't just come out of nowhere with this sort of behavior.
No, it goes back. I mean, you can look at examples like the Borgias, or you can go further back and look at examples of like the Julio-Claudians, the Caesars of Rome, some even in more in particular like Caligula. Okay, that is this bloodline in its fullest expression. And the historians will say, oh, well, those emperors went insane because they were drinking water from lead pipes. Well, yeah, that's partially true, but also, I mean, it was... given the environment, given the bloodline, given the absolute power since birth, they were twisted individuals.
Well, exactly, and both things have their place in this discussion. That's for sure. I'm almost afraid, because I know you had offered to me at one point to look over my bloodline. I'm almost afraid to look over it because I have some inclination as to who I may be related to, but there is a broken area in my bloodline that I can't quite fill in, which is also odd. Even those that concern themselves with this stuff and do the research to dig up your original family crests and things like that, they come back shooting a blank at me, which is really funny. Because I have an idea where that blank actually goes, and not too happy about it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, no, you're right to have reservations, because the disclaimer that I would give with doing that is careful when you go and it gets done, because they already track this stuff, so they know. But it's about whether or not you, the person, knows. And as long as they think that you don't know, they'll just kind of you will be overlooked on their radar. But once they know, and you've gone and you've done your own legwork, then you kind of pop up as a person of interest on that radar specifically, and they're like, "Uh-oh, what's he going to do now?" And so I mean, it can work either way. Me, I believe knowledge is power, and to hell with them. I mean, like these genealogy websites, as one example, Queen Elizabeth II employs people on her payroll to track and make sure that anyone with a real heavy dose of the royal stuff and all of that, is kept monitored, and what are they doing, what are they talking about in regard to this subject matter, and blah, blah, blah. But again, see, I mean, I don't care, obviously, based on what I now do with my career and having whistleblown and being an activist. I mean, I do not care what these people think. If I did, I wouldn't be doing this. And I think that should be everyone's evidence right there that I'm not some little Masonic little puppet slave anymore. That's just so stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and again, I've said this, I said this on the show before, I don't endorse secret societies by any means.
No, neither do I. I think that they're completely irrelevant. I mean, name one. I belong to several. So whether we're talking about the Masons or the Mormon Church or the OTO or the Scientologists or, I mean, any of the Rosicrucians, any of them, they're all one and the same. They all function the same way. They all thrive on the same negative principles. And it's sick, and it's nothing good happens in the dark. There is no need in the world for this rampant secrecy culture like we're now in.
Well, precisely. And just to give people a general idea of, because we've alluded to your bloodline now, and I did this with you before really quickly, but I mean, to give people a general sort of synopsis who you're tied to, it's pretty fascinating. So I know we went over the thing about, because of Dallas and the proximity and you having known people that were in control of media assets in the 60s. That's for sure, up until the point that they all conglomerated into these large corporations, which, by the way, take a look at who the actual stockholders of those corporations are, and you'll find that ownership didn't really change. It just looks a little different on paper now. But
in the late 80s, early 90s, the Times Mirror Corporation bought up all of those, and then in the early 2000s, it was kind of a split between Cox Communications and Belo buying them up. So now they're all Belo or Cox.
You're right, and Cox is now one of your cable companies, of course. So
yeah,
hello, it just seems to keep reoccurring, right? But about your personal bloodline, I mean, when did you find out about your bloodline, or was that something you always knew?
I knew, but I didn't know the details. They were always withheld. My family, they had the genealogy, the whole long form, everything, everything but the kitchen sink. My whole life is this. It always struck me as weird because my family, they were the types that they loved to go around that sort of culture there in Dallas and brag about everything and be snottier than thou and all of that. And yet this was one thing that obviously they had, but yet they were not out snubbing people with, and it didn't add up to me. Like, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense. And whenever something doesn't make sense, there's always a Masonic train wreck. Okay, so after it wasn't, I had tried to look into it before, but I always wound up at dead ends. And so after I whistle blew and came out and all that, I decided, all right, that's it. I've really got to get this done and figured out. And so I set out with the time and a little bit of money that was saved up, and I got it done. And really, the only thing about it that shocked me, I expected to find pretty much everything I did on my mother's side, but what shocked me was the stuff I found on my father's side. Because through him, I'm like third cousin to Vlad the Impaler, and I'm a fourth or fifth, somewhere in their generation, Stuart right off the throne. I mean, it's crazy. So it makes sense why she was made to get together with him and produce a child. Yeah. So that shocked me a little tiny bit.
And even in modern times, actually, you've got cousins that have been in the White House too.
Yeah, that's my genealogy. If anyone out there would ever try to naysay this postulation that all the U.S. presidents are related and all of these stars in Hollywood are related and all this stuff, my genealogy alone proves that theory. So it's not a theory. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's even our current president actually fits into your genealogy in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah. Here, I can pull it up real quick and tell you. Give me a few seconds. Yeah, no, that they all Obama, all of them. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's exactly what people say, and they try to naysay it, and it's like, okay, I mean, for real, you've got to. But I think they like at this point the way that people talk about it. Okay, so Barack Obama is my 10th cousin once removed through. Let's see, it goes into the Wisemans, and it goes into the Ballows, then it goes into the Brownings, then Overall, then Clark, then Dunham, and boom, there he is.
There you go. And of course, people often say to me, well, Clinton wasn't really. Yeah, he was. He's on there too.
Oh yeah, I can do this all day. Let's see, Clinton. I know I've looked this up before. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, because he seemed to be the one oddity because, well, and look, even when I was younger, I mean, the first presidential election I ever voted in, had to do with Billy Boy there. And I, at the time, not being somebody who was fully awake, thought that he was actually a pretty sharp guy and definitely different from anything we had ever seen. But it's kind of funny because, after all, where does he fall in?
Yeah. Oh no. Let's see. He's my 12th cousin, and we are connected from the Campbells to the Lockharts to the Blythes.
There we go.
So, yeah.
And then there's a whole thing about the Walkers and everything else, which you could come in there too. Yeah, we could do this all day.
Yeah. No, like I said, it's all right here. I mean, so again, to me, it's not conspiracy theory. This is fact, and so much of this stuff is fact, and it's just disinformation that, oh no, it's conspiracy theory. No, whatever. I mean, come on. Now, here's a good one. This is something that really kind of surprises people when I say this. The Rothschilds, they're every bit as nasty as people suspect and all that, but they're not bloodline. They're poor German peasant farmers who happen to get really successful and buy their way into the world stage. But if you notice, no one from that precious little European aristocracy will ever marry them, no matter how bad they want it. Why? Because they're obsessed with good breeding, which the Rothschilds do not factor into. So that's probably why they're such, nasty people, because they're like mad about that, or I don't know. It's, these people are weird.
And meanwhile, what we're talking about is the Anglo-American sort of empire here, which you're talking about, the bloodline that controls that, which has to do with the British Crown and our country. Okay, there's a whole thing that you can dig up on this, and we don't really have the time to go into it, but the truth is that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Well, totally, yeah. I mean, it's George Washington wrote that there was this influence coming over from Europe called the Illuminati, all right? And it appears that what he said was true, but see, here's the point where this gets lost in translation, is Germany exiled and broke apart the Bavarian Illuminati. So it ceased to exist as an order, but the remnants of that order went into other orders. So they went into the Golden Dawn, into the OTO, into Freemasonry, and all these things, Rosicrucians, you name it, and that whatever movement they were once representing is still alive and well in the world today. So it just, these things change and they transmute. So, I mean, I rail on this point all the time that, I hear people say, oh, well, like, I'm going to tell you secrets about the Illuminati secrets revealed, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's, first of all, if you even knew what you were talking about, you wouldn't be using that word. If you're going to describe a word of a cabal of people that meet and there's magic involved in all this and it's the top of the pyramid and all that, then it's called Order of the Silver Star, which, of course, is a reference to Sirius, the dog star. And that's your Illuminati present day. So, I was recently shooting on Hollywood Boulevard with Terry Joyce and for this reality show that we're working on, and we went there in the middle of the night from like midnight to 3 a.m. and we're walking up and down. And it's so ridiculous to me how people always talk about Jewish this and Jewish that, conspiracy-wise in Hollywood. Because, yeah, there's Jews in Hollywood, but it's no different than when a Mason sits there and goes, oh, well, I'm a good little Christian. Well, if you're a 33rd degree Mason, I'm going to go with probably not so much. And you walk up and down the boulevard, and everything you see is Masonic, not Jewish, not anything else. It's Masonic. So what does that tell you?
Well, can you do me a quick favor and explain why a 33rd degree Mason is probably not so much the good Christian? Because this is often the big cover here that, look, it's a benevolent organization. They're mostly Christian. They do accept other faiths, but they're mostly Christian. And, it's just a bunch of men getting together and networking together a little bit. And it's really, quite benign and all that kind of good stuff. Can you do me a favor, though, and just explain why a 33rd degree Mason would not be such the good Christian?
Well, yeah, no, Masonry is largely benign, and the guys are mostly good guys who are they're either naive or they're just not that bright. It's different in every case, and I don't mean to speak like demeaning of them or whatever. I mean, they're capable of figuring this out for themselves if they would stop and look, for God's sake. But yeah, no, they,
well, right. Look, the majority of those who belong to these lodges and things like that are not part of the inner circle. Really.
Right. Right. Exactly. Never will be. Yeah.
And they never will be. They're there. They get the benefit of being able to network with one another, and they get, business considerations from one another and credit considerations from one another. And it kind of works that way, but it's really the dirt level, most of them. But then there's this inner circle. So obviously we should make a differentiation between the two. Like I told you before about the Knights Templar. Well, the Knights Templar current day, okay, that organization does a lot of good work. And this is the only reason why I know they exist. They do a lot of good work, those lower level guys, for people with eyesight problems. Okay. How ironic is that? But that is what they focus on. Okay. They do a lot of stuff like that, but this is the lower levels, guys. This is not the inner circle. But what happens when you're in that inner circle, and how is it completely incongruous with, being the good-hearted Christian kind of guy?
Well, because once you're up there to that 32nd and beyond level, and there's a large beyond, anybody that thinks that the 33rd degree is like the only one or the final one after the 32nd, they're mistaken. There's countless other ones, and they're all by invitation only, quote unquote. So that's the name of that game. But anyway, the point is that when you're getting into that talent pool, we will call it, the O's you're taking at that time are the complete opposite of the O's you were previously taking in Freemasonry, which even though they're still disturbing, they're nothing like those higher ones, because at that point, where before you were swearing allegiance to, oh yes, I'll be a good citizen of my country, and yes, I'll be a good practicer of whatever it is my religion is, and blah, blah, blah. At that point, it flip-flops, and the only thing that you're swearing allegiance to or fidelity to is the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite and their system of government, as they refer to it. And they go on to say that it's the oldest form of government in the world, and it's outlasted empires and always will, and all lodges and everything else could be done away with and closed down, but the Supreme Council will still continue unabated. And it has. And that's what the nature of the beast is, and that's what I rail so hard against and what I'm trying to stop and bring down.
Right, but this is, again, the inner circle we're talking about. This is not, the guy who just, got invited because he happens to own a couple of dry cleaning stores or whatever. And all this stuff is actually by invitation anyway, even on the lower levels, right?
Well, right. When I was a Mason, and at 28 years old, when I was headhunted into that job position with the Supreme Council on their payroll, it really sent shockwaves through the corridors of Freemasonry, because up to that point, I don't think anybody in history had ever been brought into a job position like that with them, for them, under the age of like 50. So everybody was really, really taken aback by it, and it sparked a lot of jealousy, which was yet another thing that I had to contend with in that sick environment. So, but the reason that they did, the only reason that anyone seems to know of, or that was painfully obvious when it was all going on, is they were showing me around, like this little trophy poster boy or something. Isn't he cute? Isn't he bloodline? Isn't he such a wonderful Mason? Don't you want to be a Mason too? And that's what they were doing. And that's what I thought when it all came to a head. I was like, okay, I have to get out of this. I have to stop this. It's sick. I see what they're doing. They would take me over to the Scottish Rite Hospital and try to use me to pressure doctors who weren't Masons to become Masons, so they could just control the place even more. And it's that kind of stuff that I really have a problem with. And I sat and watched the Scottish Rite involve itself in the politics of local neighborhood blue lodges just to further its aims of who it wanted going up the ladder of power into the different chairs and positions like that, because the Scottish Rite's also trying to control the various grand lodges of each state or geographical region, and that is technically Masonically illegal according to their own rules and codes and things, and yet it's completely overlooked, and they turn the other cheek and just allow it to go on now. And then Masons sit there and actually wonder why their lodges and York Rite commanderies and things like that are all closing down. Well, it's because the Scottish Rite is sitting there bankrupting them on purpose, trying to consolidate all that power for themselves, because they're crazy on that. You have no idea how crazy these people are. They're not thinking with a logical full deck. They are as egotistical as the definition of the word allows. They are drunk on their power. They never, ever can bear the thought of that changing or them losing it. So these guys always have a habit of dying in their precious little chairs. And then they, of course, have some statue commissioned of themselves and parked on Scottish Rite property. And I mean, it's just sick. It's a world of sick.
Right, and I mean, words like narcissistic and megalomania come to mind because after all, like I said before, when you look at these lower levels, and now here's the thing: the upper levels wind up controlling the lower levels. So for the most part, all of that, all of that access, all of that resource through all these business people and everything else is then overseen by these other individuals who have a completely different agenda from any of the guys on the bottom, who don't necessarily have their minds in the set of wanting to participate in. Obviously, there's no serious charitable work being done except for the purposes of achieving another end. Things like this, right? Like you established, let's just say, well, actually, you could probably give me a good example of where a charitable deed has been done in order to advance another agenda, couldn't you?
Yeah, they love to give money to fire and police departments and things like that to make them look so wonderful, and at the same time try to attract more police and everything as members of various lodges. But I mean, so many, like I said when I think I brought this up. An average lodge, let's say it has $3 million on the books. It's only giving on average about $10,000 a year out to charitable aims. So what are they holding and hoarding the rest of it for? Because they spend it all on themselves, and it's money laundering that goes on right in plain sight, in full view of the public, and no one ever even bats an eyelash at it. And it just bewilders me, because they trade money back and forth between these Masonic charities. And then, like the kids that get the scholarships to college or whatever, first of all, they're not even that much. And second, they always go to Sons of Masons. So it's not like they're out trying to really benefit the community. And they get into these things like the Masonic chip program, come get your child microchipped and put on our database, and then come to our flu shot drive. And it's like, really? I mean, they're shameless with what they're out there promoting right now.
Yeah, and we've definitely talked about, the flu shots on this show. that's part of the agenda. We'll give this out for free because we know actually what it does. And yeah, people misunderstand the idea about, why is it that so many, police officers and firemen and everything else are Masons. Well, if you think about it logically, it's a lot easier on a local level to have people let off for things. It's a lot easier on a local level to have people turn their heads over different situations, let's just say, because after all, if your brothers, we need you to kind of not really solve this crime, or we need you to not know why a building burned down, or we need you to, forget about this because it's something that, your brother has asked you to do. Isn't this one of the techniques for sort of controlling things on a local level, right?
Oh, absolutely it is. Yeah, because the tagline that they always use with that type dialogue is, well, but brother, this is for the good of the fraternity. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, how could you possibly say no? And the guys that do say no find themselves in a world of crap after, they'll be ostracized and eventually kind of exiled without official exile from their lodges. They'll just be made to feel so uncomfortable and out of place that they won't want to come back if they can't play the game.
Right. I've actually talked to guys on a low level, that have nothing to do with the inner circle or anything else. If you turn around and you don't do something that's been requested of you, you very, very quickly find yourself on the outs with everything. All of a sudden, you're not being notified about things. Meetings change on you. You're no longer welcome in certain functions and things like this. And they give a whole host of other reasons for it, but you're pretty much left in the cold, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. I had a friend during the years I was active in this stuff in Dallas, and he was an electrician. And the Scottish Rite building in Dallas, it's over 100 years old, so it's going to have frequent electrical problems that are pretty complex and hard to deal with. And he demonstrated for them that he was capable of dealing with them. And after that, because their attitude was that they didn't want just some random non-Mason electrician coming in off the street, because there's a lot of things in that building that they don't want the public to see, that he was their go-to guy. And pretty soon it was constant. Where are you? We need you here now. We have a function in an hour. Drop what you're doing. Get here now. Fix this now. And I saw what it was doing to him, and it's like, oh, God, here we go. Here's another example of Masons being out of control and abusing their own. And that's why I rail against them, because I've seen it one too many times of them turning around and being abusive in one way or another to a really good brother, and it really just lights my fuse. I can't. It makes me very angry, and they have a lot of audacity, in my opinion.
Well, right, and this is not limited to something like a trade either. If you don't open the doors to your business when you're asked, if you don't do just about anything you're asked, it seems as though we've asked you, but on the back end of that, you've been told to do something, and if you don't follow orders, there is definitely a punishment involved. Which it also goes back into this thing we were talking about earlier with the families and all that. It's that same dynamic in these families. Well, you better go do this because if you don't, you'll be cut off. So it's that same bargaining tactic. You obviously you don't want to be cut off from the money in the family or from the power at the lodge. So it's mind control. Right, but it's actually, but with peers instead of, instead of keys and things, you're being given peers to keep you in line. You have your Judas goats leading the rest around. It seems like.
Oh yeah, no, it's it can be really made to look like you can't live without it. For example, I've got kind of a lead foot when I drive. Okay, I usually drive like 5-10 over the speed limit, bare minimum. And when I lived in Dallas, I was really bad. I would drive 20-30 miles an hour over the speed limit, and I would pass cops. But because they would see those decals on my car, they would just wave me off. I never got a ticket. I've never had a ticket in my life.
Well, see, that's what I meant about local control is, look, now you guys, because you're the officers, you're the other people. I mean, there was obviously different distinctions too, because I've seen, your general sort of Mason decals on the back of somebody's vehicle, and that causes cops to react differently. Check their hands for a ring. Sometimes you'll find it.
Yeah, that's another way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing. But then there's these other decals too that pretty much are licensed to do whatever. And on a local level, there's why you need these lower level guys to come in most of the time. Well, that and also the revenue that's generated, because obviously, like you said before, if you're looking at $3 million on the books and giving out 10 or 50,000 of it, it really is a drop in the bucket. So where does the rest of it go? Well, guess.
Well, yeah, and one thing I think I should probably clarify for people listening is when I sit there and say I didn't get tickets, this type stuff, and the access to the kind of power that you have, don't mistake that for like, oh, well, that sounds cool. I think I want that. No, you don't. Believe me, you do not want to pay the price that you pay to have this. I mean, they have this attitude like it's the Hotel California. You can check out but never leave, and that's exactly what I still deal with on a daily basis. And I really wish that I didn't have that in my life, but I do. I can't change the past and everything that I was a part of. But I mean, to people who sit there and attack me and, oh, well, you're a little slave, you're a little puppet, you're trying to make the Freemasons sexy in Hollywood and all that. No, believe me, I'm not. Everything I'm doing mortifies them so bad that they would never in a million years devise a scam or a scheme or whatever to have someone go out and do the things I'm doing. It's just not the way they operate. Okay? So that's why I try to be offensive. I try to be loud and obnoxious and shove this stuff right in their face, right in public view, because they hate it. It makes them cringe. They lose sleep over it. So that's how I fight them, essentially.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're down to just about the last 8 minutes, I think, here. And I'm just wondering if there's anything you want to kind of throw out there like a brick, see if we can make somebody cringe tonight. Go right ahead, because I find this extremely, enlightening. And I hate to use that word, but I'm sorry. It's actually not a dirty word, okay? I find this extremely enlightening, and I would love to make a Mason or two cringe if they're listening. So, by all means, go right ahead.
Oh no, I've got the perfect thing as a brick to make them. So I'm teaming up with Stephen D. Kelly and Terry Joyce from Revolution Radio, and together we're hosting this little event on the night of October 30th in the middle of Hollywood. And we're calling it the Illuminati Halloween Ball, okay? See, it's the anti-Illuminati Halloween Ball. So we're going to go balls to the wall, full, eyes wide shut, appearance-wise. But this is going to be simulcast on multiple networks. It's going to have a live video feed, and the footage that they're taping during it is going to be used for this pilot of our reality show. And the whole point of doing this, this exercise, is to bring awareness. We're going to have, speakers and bands, and it's all going to be activists and all of this. So right in the middle of Hollywood, in the midst of this Masonic orgy of control that Hollywood is based on, we're going to be having this Illuminati, quote-unquote, ball to kind of mock it. Well, not kind of, to severely mock it. And it's going to be in the studio we're working out of, right across the street from the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. So it's kind of a primo location and all of that. And so, yeah, we're going to do this and just completely humiliate them with their own stuff they do. We're going to really, really make them look like they've got their pants down, and that's what the whole point of this is. So, and anybody that's interested in finding out more about it, you can search on Facebook for 2014 Illuminati Halloween Ball, or you can send an email to realfreemasonsofhollywood@gmail.com, or let's see what else. There's a page on Indiegogo, I believe, if you search in that. But otherwise, yeah, and if you live in the Los Angeles or Southern California area, please come to this thing. So it's going to be a big deal, and hopefully we start some kind of annual event kind of party thing in Hollywood, and do this every year and just mock them on their little special night of Hallows Eve right there in front of them. And this is going to get so carried away and over the top that the mainstream media is not going to be able to ignore it. So that's another point with this exercise, is we're really, really rubbing their duplicity right back in their own faces. So yeah, it's going to be quite something.
It's I was asked about this on Sunday on sort of this impromptu show that happened on this network, and I didn't know much about it. I'm glad you covered it, because Ochelli from Cold Reality News asked me about this, and let me tell you, man, I really am looking forward to it. I hope you guys will somehow, if I'm on the air at the same time this is going on, I hope you guys will hit me up and give me an update, because I'd love to hear what's going on while it's happening.
Oh yeah, and there's going to be fun stuff too. I mean, we're going to have a Illuminati costume contest and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's really, I don't want to jump the gun yet, but it's looking like there may be some celebrities that show up to this, some very well-known activists. So fingers crossed. I don't want to spoil it or say something before it's not confirmed or whatever. But yeah, it's going to be a big deal, and I think after it occurred, because it's already the talk of the town, everybody's going on and on about it. I went out last night and somebody walked up to me and mentioned it, and like, okay, yeah, we're making headlines with this. So, but that's good. That's what we're seeking to do. We want to bring this dialogue out further into people's daily lives and get it addressed. I mean, because something has to be done. This can't just go on forever like the way it is. It's getting out of control. Have you watched a music video lately?
Yeah, it's loaded with all kinds of imagery. I noted, and people don't like it too much, but I noted that, one of the anti sort of things that went on recently was in a Black Sabbath video. Now that's kind of sad. That the demonized hard rock band from the 70s, which put out that album last year, they were actually showing us some anti-Illuminati imagery that I think people didn't quite understand, some anti-elitist imagery that I think people didn't quite understand. But if you look at the rap videos especially, the stuff is loaded up with it. Before we run out of time, though, just for people to be able to find you, how could they do that?
They can go to dialmformason.weebly.com. That's the website of my show, Dial M for Mason. Or you can find me on Facebook, James Robert Wright, or let's see what else. I'm joining Liberty Beacon, so just waiting on that to launch, and I'll be broadcasting on there with my show. And I'm kind of I'm a full-blown regular panel guest on the shows of Revolution Radio, so you'll frequently hear me on there, and and then of course going around doing boots on the ground activism around Los Angeles. You'll find me there too at rallies and things. So yeah,
right, and that's you can find that Revolution Radio stuff at freedomslips.com, I think, because I was checking out some shows earlier today on there myself. I actually caught Terry Joyce while she was broadcasting on a roundtable thing. So, it was kind of funny. I didn't expect it was a random thing, but there she was. And look, man, I really want to thank you once again for coming on. I could probably talk to you about this for I don't know how many hours, but I'm just really grateful that you've come on twice now, actually, to discuss this. And I'm sorry if I missed any points that you wanted to get to, but I think we pretty much covered a pretty good span of things here tonight. And I want to thank everybody for listening, because this has been the Ochelli Effect. Of course, I'm Chuck Ochelli on UCY.TV. You can find us, in case you're listening to this further downstream, or on something else like the iTunes stream, the Shoutcast, or the TuneIn app. You can just go to the UCY.TV/TOE page, and that is the home for this show right now. So, you can do that anytime you like. And every Tuesday is the Liberty Beacon on here. This is what I do. I do lots of other stuff, too, on Thursdays and Saturdays, and you can find all that stuff being archived on there, or go to the UCY.TV YouTube channel, and a lot of my shows get ripped right to there. It's just a banner to watch. It's no video, but as I said earlier in the show, I've got a face for radio, so you're kind of lucky in that way that you're just staring at the little banner. So, but James, again, I really thank you, and I'm so glad that there is somebody who has been a part of this type of stuff, who is out there speaking out about it. I can't wait to see. I know I'm going to probably watch that footage over and over again of the Illuminati Halloween party, because it just sounds like one of those things that I'm gonna have to laugh, but I'm hoping that it makes the type of impact.
Yeah.
Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
See, but I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? Crystals and fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. Doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not just Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have threes, two source guys, 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 threes,